Hello, this is Marian Pena, coming to you from seemstobeso.com. Today I'm going to show you a tutorial based on a tutorial I created yesterday for Electric Quilt users. What happens when you don't have Electric Quilt and you need to make a layout for your quilt? I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, I know a lot of people like to draw, and there is nothing wrong with drawing. I can definitely see the advantage to doing it. But when you want to see how fabrics look in a row, or how placement might work with a certain border or panel, you don't get to have that easily unless you want to cut it out and put it on a drawing board or a design wall. So with software, you can do this easily and work at getting just the right look for your quilt. So I'm going to show you how to do that with software that's known as Inkscape. Inkscape is known for a lot of people who draw. It's drawing software, simply put. It does allow you to use images to draw with, but the main purpose of Inkscape is to allow you to draw. It allows you to create cutting files for your cutting machines. By default, it saves to the SVG format, which is a scalable vector graphics file. But you can also save to other formats. It will also export to a PNG format, which is a graphics format. When you download Inkscape, which is available at inkscape.org, you can click on the download button, which is somewhere along here. There used to be one right here on the page. I don't know why it's not here now. There it is. So I'm going to click on the download, and you have several options. They have a Mac version, they have a 64-bit version, and a 32-bit version for Windows. They have Linux versions. The thing is that when you have different versions, sometimes you need to install something extra for it to go. Like, I know Mac users usually have something extra they have to install, or something has to already be installed for Mac users to use it. That's pretty much the extent of my Mac knowledge. I mean, I have no idea how to use Mac whatsoever, so please don't ask me those questions. But I always install the 64-bit because my computer is a 64-bit machine. But if you have an older computer, yours is probably still a 32-bit machine. So you'll want to know that, and you can find that information out by looking at your system configuration and control panel. I'm not going to go into that today. So you download the version that's best for you, whichever one it is, and go ahead and install it. Allow it to install where it wants to go, and that's pretty much it. As far as Inkscape goes, it is free software. You never have to pay for it. You can donate to it if you choose to do so. If you really love it, give them a little bit of money, support their efforts, because they're making great software for you to use. Okay, so let's go into Inkscape and open it up for the first time. Okay, this is the quilt I created in Inkscape for this lesson. It uses rows from the various weeks of the Road Home Row Along. We have Alita's, we have Carla Hinton's, Carol Swift's, there's Mary, and then there's Helene's. The rest of these are panels and border strips, and just even little bits of strips. Last year when I did a tutorial like this, I used just small filler blocks, and we had incorporated bloggers who created just filler blocks to release instead of rows. This year I wanted to get rid of that because I felt that the filler rows were really something people could do anyway, and since they'd already been covered last year, there just didn't seem to be a need to do it this year. But as I was creating these and realizing that I had probably made the mistake of not having the rows all be the same size, I decided that I would show you how to fill in those spots. This year's rows did not have a set length to them for the most part. The highest they could go was 40 inches, but there was a set height, and that was a 12-inch block. So all of the rows in the Road Home Row Along are 12 inches high, but they vary. Like my Idaho Falls row is only 30 inches. The Paula and Paula Reed's row, the Hollywood row, is 40 inches. Sarah's row is a vertical row, but it's 12 by 40. So a lot of the bloggers did create 40-inch rows. There are very few that aren't 40 inches, but just the same, there are those rows that aren't. All the rows I've used here in this one are 40-inch rows, but I'll show you what you can do also when you don't have a 40-inch row, and I'm just going to reduce one of the rows to show you what I mean and let you see from that. But when we first open Inkscape, it usually opens up pretty tiny. This is how mine always opens just by default. And if it doesn't do that, then it opens up full screen. I dislike any program to be open full screen on my PC because I have way too much open to want to give any software full screen. So I just always resize it to what I like. And the first thing we want to do when we set up working on a layout for a quilt is our grid options. And we're going to go to File. We want to come down here to Document Properties, and we want to set up our grid. Whoops. Okay, so first, I change everything to inches because I don't work in pixels. I don't have the first clue what pixels do. I also don't work in metrics, so I don't know those things either. I work in inches. That's what I know, and that's what I like to work in. So I choose inches, and that will change this up here to inches, and it will keep it in inches. Sometimes if you don't set it, it will go back and forth. So it's good to come in here and get it done here. Okay, then I change this to US letter instead of A4. And I want everything else. I want to be sure everything else says inches. I want to make sure I've got that all covered. Then I'm going to come over here to Guides, and I'm going to create a new guide. I don't have to worry about my X and Y origins, but I do want to fiddle-faddle with these because I do not want 1 inch spacings between. It's just not correct. What happens is you have 5 lines to a major change, and I'm not even seeing that here, but I want to be able to see that. So I'm going to change these to, because I have inch measurements, I want to change this to inch. And you can see how it changed the number from 1.0 to the 0.1111. Well, I want that to be a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to change it to 0.2500. Okay. And it's going to add an extra 0. But that's what we use. We use 1/4 inches. I prefer that, and you can see here how that's made a difference in the look. We want to change this to 4 because we're working in inches. We need 4/4 inches to our inch. So we want every major grid line to be at 1 inch. Okay, so you have here your first one, and then here's the next one. Just seems slightly off to me, but I don't know why. I wonder if this should be 0025. I couldn't have that off. I wondered why when I was making the other quilt too, it seemed a little off. Just doesn't seem right, does it? It seems like it's fine on these major points, but Okay, maybe that's it. Okay, 0, 1, there, that's it. So you want this to be 0.02500, and that's what I have wrong on my other one, because I wondered why I was off just a little bit on the lines. But I'm not doing this to get sizings, okay? I, I'm doing this strictly to get a layout. If I wanted a size, I'd be more accurate about what I drew and what I was adding, and I would check my panel sizes, I would check the width of the border stripe, all of that stuff. So before we get started next, we want to check our snaps. I prefer to only snap when it's pretty close. But most of the time, I end up turning my snap off because even in Electric Quilt, I cannot stand the snapping. It just drives me bonkers that I can't get that point where I want that point. Not at the nearest quarter inch, not at the nearest eighth, not at the even the nearest 16th. I want it to go where I want it to go. And when I want it to go there, I don't want it to snap into place. So I normally end up turning snap off because I just cannot stand snaps. But a lot of people swear by them and love them. So I'm just letting you know that this will allow you to choose how close you want your snapping distance to be. You can bring it all the way down to 1. You can take it all the way up to 50. It just depends on what you prefer. But by default, it's at 10. And so that's where I'm going to leave it. I'll be right back. What I want to show you here is that I have here in Directory Opus, which is my version of my file manager. I've used this for years. I love it. And I don't use any other file managers except for this one. I don't use Windows anymore because it doesn't have enough options for me. This is expensive software. It's by no means free. I believe they have, the one thing that's cool about this software is that they do have a 60-day trial period that you can try this software for, but it is not cheap to buy. It is quite expensive. But I just have the one license. I don't put it on my other machines. I just put it on this one, and it works fine for me on this one. So, and it's always on the one I use. Frank doesn't use it, so I just keep it on my PC. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is you want to, if you have collected border stripes, I briefly showed this, I actually overshowed this on yesterday's video, and I don't want to do that today. But I want to just show you some border stripes. So I'm going to change to this layout so that you can see here I've collected up a bunch of border stripes. I've taken and I've edited them down so that they're just one little stripe, and I took and I just cropped from like one end to the other because I figured that was probably a pretty good ability for it to tile well. In Electric Quilt, when you have a fabric, it will tile, whereas when you bring it as in a photo, it won't. In Inkscape, it's not going to tile. If you want it to repeat, you've got to duplicate it to get it to do that. You don't want to stretch it necessarily because stretching it causes the fabric to look out of shape, and of course your fabric isn't going to look like that anyway. You can see here I have Carla Henton's border. I have it in my quilt that I showed earlier. These are just other border stripes. These are some panels that I picked out to use. They're just kind of odd ends, but they're fabrics I intend to buy when they come out. And most of these are from Northcott. I really like what is coming from Northcott, especially these animals. I cannot wait to get my hands on these animal prints. I'm very excited. But like I've been watching for this one to be released, which comes out in September. This one's due out in September. So I need to start watching eBay and the online stores so I can make sure to get it. And hey, maybe where I'm moving, they'll have it at the quilt shop there. Who knows? There's 4 quilt shops in Colorado City, or Colorado Springs. I wonder how well they'll keep up with me. So, we'll see. Okay, so let's get back to, you've seen some of the border stripes. I'm going to be pretty simple with this because this is really simple to do once we get started in Inkscape today. So we're going to be importing everything. Everything gets imported. Nothing is open as or save as or that kind of thing. Everything is import. So we're just going to get used to using either Control I on our keyboard, which I don't do. I just always come to the menu because to me it's easier. If I have to use both fingers to put on my keyboard, I'm less likely to use a keyboard shortcut. So first I want to choose one of the wonderful rows from the Road Home Row Along, and so I need to get back into that folder, and let's come on down here. Let's do Allie. She had a really nice row. Now when you bring these rows in, they're all going to be different sizes, and some of them may not have been finished, or like there's a white background on the row. You want to take in, and how I got all of these images for the most part was by saving them off of their web page, and that's just with the right click, save as image, or download image, or whatever your right click menu says for downloading images. And while a lot of people don't like for you to do that on their images, a lot of them don't stop you either because they link to their image and not link to nothing. So I'm telling you, bloggers, right now, if you don't want your images snapped up, then stop linking to them. But in the meantime, I mean, there are other ways, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, it's save as images, and you just download them. And you can resize them. We're not resizing in the drawing software. We're going to resize, but we're not actually resizing them as an image. We're just kind of working with this image and drawing from it and that kind of thing. So we're going to take this one, and this row is a 12 by 40 row, I believe. But if I wanted to make sure, I would open the PDF. Hold on just a sec. I would open the PDF file, which is right here, and this is Allie's, and I would just check. See, right there, finished size, 12.5 by 40.5. So, because I don't really want that big of a size in Inkscape to work with, I'm going to drop it in half, and I'm going to make this 6 inches high. You see how much that already changed it. And then on the width, I'm going to make it as wide as 20. And that's a pretty good size, and it's okay to work with. I'm just going to ignore this for right now because I don't really need this to worry about. I'm not going to be printing this file out or anything like that. And I just want to kind of line it up on some lines that will help me out. I'd like it on 1 inch so that I have it nice. It's nice and easy to keep track of. Okay, so next I'm going to pull up another row. I want to put it in another row. So this one is nice because Electric Quilt, you don't have these options where when you're putting in the layouts, and what I showed yesterday is constantly changing. If I change any part of the row in the custom layout for the horizontal layout, you're constantly having to resize, whereas you don't have that problem in Inkscape. So this is where you could really take and first do it in Inkscape and then go to Electric Quilt and work on the rest of it with your own fabrics and that kind of thing. So that's an option you can certainly think about. This is Cynthia's. Let's have Cynthia's. Okay. Now again, I could go to her PDF and have a look at hers. I'm going to say that she probably did 12-inch blocks. So this is probably a 36-inch row. So we're going to make this 6 inches. And then we're going to make this half of 36 is 18. That's how I'm doing this, is I'm just halving the size. We have 12 by 40 rows. This is 6 by 20, which is half of the size. And I can work with that. I can see this whole picture. It's enough to work with on my desktop. It's nice and big, so you know it's enough for me to work with Inkscape. So I might want to move this up here a little bit. I want my I want this to be big enough that I can work in, but at the same time, you know, I'd like it big enough to make a quilt. So I want to be sure that I'm getting that all covered and taken up well. Now, I love the idea of what I call the ping-pong effect, where a row is on one side and then it's on the opposite side on the next row down. And that kind of gives, it's kind of like ping pong, you know, where it's going back and forth, or flip-flop. You could always call it a flip-flop method as well. I like that look because I think your eye gets diverted to the whole quilt and not just one part of the quilt. And sometimes when you have row quilts, that's what you want. You want to be able to see everything, not just one part. You know, you don't want your eye to be fixated on one row. You want to see everything that comes into the row. So that's why I like the little filler areas, because they help to bring your eye to the full part of the quilt and not to just one row of the quilt. So I'm going to leave this like this. For now, I'm just going to kind of set it. I have it at 14 here. It's at 14 here. I'm going to guess that it's about, oh, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't want to add. It's too late at night. It's almost 4 in the morning. And I have to stay up another 4 hours. So, okay, so we could continue to add rows, or I can show you at this point how to add the sashing and such. And that's what I'm going to do, because for the most part, it's just the basic same thing. I would just add another row and I would just put it over here. So let me go ahead and show you how to do panels and border stripes. I want to come up here to that, and let's take and do maybe this one. I don't know how wide this one is, so I guess we'll wait and see when it gets in. What's cool about this is this also tells you how wide it is, which you don't get in Electric Quilt either. I mean, I hate to compare the two, but you would think it would at least tell you. So here we are. We have this 2 and 3/4 essentially. Well, no, 2 1/3 essentially, speaking width of the height. It's not the width, it's the height. And so we could set it in here so that it's really giving it some separation. And this we would want to bring on down. And see, the snaps are what's causing this to work into place. And that's where I would go a little crazy at some point, because that's not something I would want. And this is something you'd want to change this to maybe 3. I think 3 is going to be too wide. We're going to probably want it at 2.5 instead. So if you had this in here and you wanted to try and keep it at even numbers, or numbers you can manage easily, like a fraction like 2.5 is easy, but a fraction like 2 1/3 is a little bit more difficult, because a lot of our rulers don't give us a 2 1/3 measurement. We've either got the quarter, the half, or the 3/4, but we rarely have the thirds. So you want to keep that in mind too. You want something that's going to be easy to cut. Remember that even if you add that third, you know, if you round it out to 2.5, you're going to have part of that in your seam allowance anyway. So give that consideration when you do that. And then what you do is you right click and you choose duplicate, and you just drag it over here. And as you can see, you can line them up so that they work out perfectly. And if you don't like, if the size doesn't work out, you can just kind of overlay it, or you can move it back and forth to make it work for you. Okay, that's not going to quite work because there's a little house here and there's no house here to help it out. So let's just cover that up. Now I'd like to show you what working with the snaps turned off. And here you can turn off the snap to grids. Okay, this one is snap to guides, and that's these little babies along here that will come in and help you if you want to make sure you're getting something lined up. You know, they'll help you get that done. That's what these babies are for, and they come down here like this and across like this, and they even come over here in the corner and they do a diagonal. When I get it right, it works great. See, if I wanted to put this on the diagonal, like I wanted to show you this, I started working on this because I think this would be a cool layout for a quilt where you put it on the diagonal. You know, you do one side this way and then you do the other side coming down the other way. That'd be pretty cool. But I didn't want to show that tonight because it does get a little complicated. So, but it would be fun to do, don't you think? So anyway, now we're ready to add a panel. And so let's bring in here and import again and come to panels. And let's choose something maybe a little bit on the long side. See how that'll work out. Now when you do these kind of things, remember that you do need to measure your panels and your border stripes to know the widths that you have to work with. And that's what you're going to be having to fill in here. Here I just get to kind of play and have fun because I haven't actually dug out these fabrics, you know, and like the panels aren't even released yet. All of the border stripes have been previously released. They are from Wilmington Prints and Windham Prints. And they have lots of great border stripes. I love buying their border stripes. I love border stripes, period. I think they're fun. I think they're great to put in as a border for a quilt. You really get that extra that you don't normally get. So here we have created the panel. As you can see, I just dragged it out to try and get it a size because I know it needs to be on this line. Okay? And I know that it needs to line up here. So for the most part, this is 8.5 inches by 8 inches. So this is a 28-inch row currently. Okay, so if I double that, it becomes 56. It's just about right for a queen size. So you have just about what you needed, that you could add a nice wide border with this as it is. So as you can see, it's building up quite nicely in this respect. Now if you wanted to, you can take and add with this the rectangle and square drawer. You could take and drawer, I know it's a bad word, but you can take and you can make some sashing. Now I like to do this kind of thing in black because I think it's a good separator, but any dark color, green or purple or blue, will work great also. It really depends on what you like. I'm a black person. I love black. I love working with it because I can use any color I want with black, and I'm always happy. So this is just where you'd want to be sure that you've got this in the size that you want it at also. And that's going to be 6 inches by 1 inch. Okay? You don't need sashing to be really wide. You want it to just separate enough so that it gives you your row visibility and your block visibility over here. You could add even more of this row. Let's say you really love this row. Well, she has this in sections. It's the same with Allie's. You could just make another lighthouse and add it down here. Maybe add something else in here. You know, maybe cut part of this off and just do the small grapes. Or maybe add something that reflects your idea of the area. You know, it would not be hard to even piece a block that would give you that sense. But you could do anything you wanted. You don't have to use panels. You don't have to use border stripes. But they do make it nice. Like if you knew the state bird or that kind of thing and you had a panel, or let's say you have the flag, you could add the flag panel along here also. So there's all kinds of great things you can do with laying out and putting it in this software. And Inkscape is the perfect solution. Once you're done, you can just take and save it. If you should save it. Okay, you can export it as a PNG file. You could save it as an SVG file, and that way you can open it again in Inkscape to work on, and all you would probably do is ungroup it and then just start working on it, and you would just use the features that I've shown you here. Just remember that the most important part of this document is what you do at the beginning, because you want your grid to show and you want to be able to work with the sizes. You want to work in inches if that's what you're familiar with. If you're familiar with centimeters or metrics, that's also what you want to work with. You only want to work with pixels if you're drawing line art or working with graphic type things. Even with cutting machines, we still want inches and metrics. So that's where it's really important to make sure you change your document properties first under the file menu so that you're working in what you're used to. Don't do it right here, because like I said, this is a little buggy if you just change it here, because you can work on one thing, you can draw one thing in inches, and then it will change back to pixels, and it's very frustrating to have to go back and forth like that. So that's where I would encourage you to take and just play with the software. It's free. I mean, you're not going to ruin anything. You're not ruining the images either, because you're importing the image in, and that's not affecting the image. You're making a whole new document. See where it says up here, new document? So it's like making a Word document. You're importing the image in. You're not affecting the actual image. So that's the nice part, because when you save it, you're saving something new. And even if you bring in something you've already made and you open it, you can give it a new name. Because when you do export, let's say you export to PNG, this is here where it would give you the name, and you get the option of how you want to name it. If you do save as SVG, it's the same thing here. By default, it's going to name it drawing, but you could add a -1, or you could name it Pena -1, whichever one you want to do, and save it to where you want it to save to. I always revert to my desktop when I do lessons, because for me that's the one place I know I'll find the files. I almost always save lessons to the desktop first, and then I move them later elsewhere. So I hope this has helped you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask away. This is going to be in my tutorial sections under quilting, and I'm happy to answer any lessons or any questions that you may have about this lesson. I hope you'll give it a go. I hope you will try it, and go back to those websites and download those images. I'm sorry, bloggers, for those of you who don't like that to happen. Unlink those images. So I hope you all have a great day. And you don't have to use the road home images. You could use any row. You could take a scan of a row by row image and use that. If that's something you're putting together as something from the row by row experience. Take a picture of the row and do it that way. Take your rows and do it that way. There's no reason why you have to use anything from the road home. This is just an idea of what you can do with rows in particular. I hope you have a great day. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. We'll see you with another one pretty soon. Bye-bye for now.